Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello, friends. My name is Bhante Jayasara, and I've been asked to speak today on the topic of, do we need a savior? And this is an interesting question. Do we need a savior, right? Well, I guess the first thing you would ask is, what do you need being saved from? Or do you feel like you actually do need something to be saved from? Right? That's the first question. When you think about your life, when you think about what life is like and what life is about, you ask the question, do I need to be saved from this? That's the question, right? Once you realize if you need to be saved, then the question comes, do you need a savior? And so the Buddha, right, in his first noble truth, he talks about what? He talks about dukkha. He talks about that in life which is difficult to bear. All right, what is difficult to bear? Birth is difficult to bear. Aging is difficult to bear. Death is difficult to bear. Sickness, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair is difficult to bear. Not getting what you want is difficult to bear. Being separated from people, places, and experiences you love is difficult to bear. And having to deal with people, places, and experiences you don't like is difficult to bear. Okay? That's the Buddha's definition of the first noble truth of dukkha. That there are these experiences in life that are difficult to bear. You know, one English translation, the most common English translation is suffering. And that's an okay translation, but it doesn't quite encompass all of what dukkha is. So when we think about dukkha, right, this is kind of how we decide if we want to be saved. Right? Think about yourselves and your lives, right? Maybe you were born into Buddhism, or maybe you came into it later. I don't know. That's your story. But you think, well, how far do I want to take this? Right? Do I want to become fully enlightened? Am I okay? I want to go to the heaven realms, right? When we experience unpleasant experiences in our lives, dukkha, that gives us wisdom and understanding. Right? And we realize, why do I want to keep dealing with this dukkha? Why do I want to keep suffering? Right? For some people, maybe it's about anxiety and stress and fear. For others, it might be about lots of traumatic experiences they've had in their lives. And then maybe they search for the Buddhist teachings. And they read about the Noble Eightfold Path, the Fourth Noble Truth. The Noble Eightfold Path, the path that leads to the ending of our suffering. And they think, this might be a good thing to try. They might say, I don't know if I believe in this rebirth stuff or whatever, but maybe in this very life, this path can help me to deal with lots of dukkha that I've had in my life. Right? If you see the stories of many of the disciples of the Buddha, maybe even like Kisagotami, Patachara, people who went through lots of really severe loss of loved ones, traumatic experiences, and they found the Dhamma. Right? And then they say, this path, this teaching can lead me to the ending of my suffering. Right? They answered the question, do I need saving? Right? They realized, they saw in their life, I need saving. Saving from what? Saving from dukkha. Saving from my own craving. Right? Saving from the actions that I do that cause myself and others to suffer. Right? I need saving. It's kind of like they say in therapy and things like that. To be able to change something, you first have to admit it. You have to acknowledge that it exists, right? And so you first have to come and recognize that dukkha exists. Now I want to do something about it. And so once you know, okay, I want to be saved, then you follow the Noble Eightfold Path and you practice and you listen to the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha says, you alone commit evil deeds. You alone commit good deeds. You must practice and walk the path yourself. Buddhas can only show the way. Right? This is from the Dhammapada. But one who practices this Noble Eightfold Path practices sila, samadhi, panya. They will go beyond the reach of Mara. Right? They will become awakened. So the Buddha is quite clear that he can't really help you. He can make sure that this teaching is proclaimed, which is what he did. Right? He proclaimed the Dhamma and he taught it for 40 years so that enough people could hear it so that they could pass it down. And so many, many years, thousands of years later, here we are in this modern age, we're able to hear the teachings of the Buddha. Okay? Now it's up to us to practice the teachings, to learn them, and to make sure that they survive for our future generations. Right? For our children's children's children's, so that they can hear the Dhamma. They can practice this Noble Eightfold Path. Right? They can save themselves. That's what's very interesting about Buddhism. I was raised Catholic, and I was raised in the Judeo-Christian upbringing, and it's about being saved and going to heaven and things like that. And when I came to Buddhism, when I was looking at Buddhism, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Right? There's nobody that can save you. There's an interesting sutta where the Buddha is asked by a Brahmin. He's asked, how many people will become awakened under your dispensation? And the Buddha says, I'm not concerned with how many people will become awakened, but those who do will follow the Noble Eightfold Path. So, do we need a savior? It's up to you. But if you do feel like you need to be saved, and you need a savior, well, look in the mirror. That's your savior. You. Only you know what's in your mind. Only you know if the greed, hatred, and delusion in your mind are lessening. Right? If this teachings and this practice of the Dhamma is benefiting your life. Right? Not everybody's going to become awakened in this life, not even most monks. Right? So maybe you're not shooting for awakening in this life. That's fine. Right? Whether you're shooting for awakening in this life or not, whether you're a layperson or a monastic, the way you save yourself is by following the Noble Eightfold Path. Unfortunately, there's no Buddha's not around, to be a, what do they call, a motivational speaker, right? There's like a drill sergeant, somebody who's going to wake you up and say, come on, practice the Dhamma. That the Buddha's gone. Buddha has, become awakened. He's proclaimed the Dhamma. Now he's extinguished. Right? Even if there's a wonderful Arahant monk alive today, and you go and you listen to him, you could listen to, or her even maybe. If you listen to this monastic for 40 years, but you never practice, right? It's good to listen to the Dhamma. That will be of benefit to you for in this life and the others, but you're not going to get too much closer to awakening, too much closer down the path of the Noble Eightfold Path just by listening. The Buddha says that one lends an ear to hear the Dhamma, and that gives you zeal, desire to practice the Dhamma. And however you practice it, whether you're a layperson or a monastic, right? There is a difference in the practice between layperson and monastic, but there's also not that much of a difference because it's still the Noble Eightfold Path. So if you feel that you'd like to do something about your situation, right? About your dukkha, about your suffering in life, well, then there's nobody else that's going to be able to lift you out of your suffering. Why? Because it's in the mind. Nobody can take away your suffering. Now, societies and governments and people and organizations can maybe lessen material suffering, like physical suffering. But you see, even in places like America, where everybody's so, even the poorest people have electricity and cell phones and computers and all kinds of stuff, right? And in a land of plenty, there's still suffering. There's still dukkha. Lots of people are unhappy. Lots of people are not acting skillfully. Right? This is why it's in your mind. Right? This is how you abandon dukkha. Is whether you are rich or poor, you have to deal with old age, sickness, and death. Right? You have to deal with dukkha. Being separated from loved ones. Having to deal with people you don't like. This is the way it is. And some people, they practice the Dhamma. They listen to the Dhamma. And they get to the point where they say, you know, I think I'm done with this samsaric existence. Let me practice. May not be awakened in this lifetime, but at least if I practice strong, practice with lots of zeal, then maybe in a few lifetimes or some lifetime soon, I can end my samsaric journey, end my dukkha. No more birth, no more death. Right? No more birth, no more dukkha. Right? So then those people say, all right, well, nobody can do the work for me. Buddha says, if you want to end, you got to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. So I'm going to practice. Nobody can drag you down the Noble Eightfold Path. Now you can have what's called kalyanamitas, right? Good spiritual friends. The Buddha says that he is the ultimate kalyanamita, which is why I love to read the suttas, right? Because that's the closest we'll ever get to the original word of the Buddha. Buddha is my biggest kalyanamitas, but I also have others. There's many experienced monks who have been practicing for many, many, many years. Right? I've been practicing for 16 years, but there's monks that have been practicing since before I was born. Right? And I can listen to them, learn from them. Right? I can learn a lot from them, maybe even, but they can't bring me further down the path. Right? They're down the path over here, and I'm like here, right? And I can learn from them, and they can give me some advice, right? And then I have to take that advice and that learning to heart and then practice. There's a funny sutta where a person comes up to the Buddha and he says to the Buddha, he says, you know, it's really hard to practice. You know, and the Buddha says, of course, my disciples do it even though it's hard. And he keeps giving more excuses. But it's really hard to practice lots of metta. And the Buddha says, well, my disciples do it even though it's hard. It's really it's really hard to practice for jhanas. My disciples do it because it's hard. This person tried to find all kinds of excuses, right? To complain, to be like, but this is hard. Is there an easier way? And the Buddha says, no, my disciples do this even though it's hard. Right? So it's not easy. And I'm not even talking about meditation. Practicing sila is not easy. right? Really fully upholding the 5 precepts? Most people can't do that all the time. That's why the Buddha said that they are training rules. Right? First one is Panatipata Vedamani Sikapadang Samadhyami. Sikapadang, Panatipata is not to slay beings, but the Sikapadang Samadhyami. This is a training rule to be undertaken. Means that nobody's perfect. Not even many monks, right? Only arahants are perfect. That's it. Everybody else is still training. Everybody else is still following the Noble Eightfold Path. So when you understand this, and you say, well, okay, I'm going to train. I'm going to practice. Right? I'm going to do my best to live by the 5 precepts. I'm going to do my best to practice lots of dana. Not just to monks, and not just money, and not just meals, but time and energy. Right? The Buddha says the person who doesn't practice any dana is like a cloudless sky. A person who gives a little bit here but not to there is like a small shower. Right? The Buddha says, be like a big rain cloud that pours down rain to all, right? In the highlands and the lowlands, right? So practicing dana is not easy either, right? When you practice dana, you might have the intention, you want to do this without any expectations, without any desire of any kind of gain, but then you see in your mind that your mind has some desires for practicing dana, right? That's normal. That's the mind, right? Even practicing dana, you can start to understand how the mind works. Okay? Only you can do that for yourself, right? All kinds of senior monastics and senior teachers, they've done that. And they can tell you a little bit of what it's like. But you are the only one who can really investigate your mind, to understand your mind, because you're the only one who experiences your mind. Right? You have craving, second noble truth. Right? That craving is the cause of your suffering. There's no pill, right? There's no monk or no Buddha. They can come in, they give you a little needle, and they say, all right, once you get this needle, right, this vaccine is against craving, right? We'll give you this vaccine and your craving will all go away. Right? We'll give you this pill and your craving will all go away. No such thing. The only way that you abandon your craving is by practicing this Noble Eightfold Path. Practicing sila, samadhi, panya, practicing dana, right? That's the only way. And then one day, maybe many lifetimes from now, who knows? But one day, you too will say, will understand the victory cry of the Arahants. Kina jati. Birth is ended. Vusatang brahmacharyang. The holy life has been lived. Katang karaniyang. Done is what had to be done. Na parang itatayati pajanati. There is nothing further for this world. Right? Then you have become an arahant. You've become your own savior. Right? Now, you walk the path previously trodden by the Buddha. Right? We needed the Buddha to find this path. Right? So without the Buddha, and without us being born in a time where the Buddha's dispensation is still alive in this earth, then we couldn't practice, right? So we need the Buddha to have proclaimed and set up the fourfold assembly so that we can learn the Dhamma when we're born, right? But then that's the end, right? The rest is up to us. The rest is up to us to listen to the Dhamma, to practice the Dhamma, to realize the Dhamma with our own insight and our own wisdom. Because nobody can save you. Why? Because it's your karma, right? It's your results of past karma from past lives. It's your good and bad deeds. It's your craving. It's your suffering. Nobody else can take that away. You are the only one who can do that. Okay? That might be a scary thought. Oh man, wouldn't it be easier if I could, just pray to somebody or whatever and they can do it for me? Right? Of course, it might be a scary thought. But it's also a very empowering thought. People think that Buddhism is very nihilistic, very depressing. Like when you talk to somebody about Dukkha, about the Four Noble Truths, they say, oh, this Buddhist teaching is so depressing. It's all about suffering and all these things, right? But they only hear half the story. The Buddha gives a set of 5 recollections that we should think about often, right? First is that we are subject to old age, subject to illness, subject to death, and we'll be separated from all those that we love, right? Those are the first 4, but the 5th is in many ways the most important. Buddha wants us to remember that we are the owners of our karma. We take responsibility for our actions, right? We are the heirs of our karma. Our karma is our sibling, right? Whatever we do for good or ill, to that we shall be the heir. So it's very empowering, right? People don't like to hear that they're the cause of their own suffering, right? But it's very empowering that the Buddha says, yes, you're the cause of your own suffering, but you can do it. You can end it. You can practice and develop it. You can develop your mind. Buddha says that this is the teaching of all the Buddhas, to abstain from evil deeds, to perform good deeds, and to cleanse the mind. Right? You can do it. We all can do it. Buddha says, if there was no way to end this suffering, and if this practice was detrimental, harmful to you, I would not say, do this practice. But because it is beneficial, I say to you, do this practice. Only you can do it. Now, of course, you can practice together. Your whole family can practice the Dhamma. Your community can practice the Dhamma, right? You can meditate in a hall with 40 other people, like if you go on a meditation retreat, right? And maybe you get some enthusiasm from being with other people and things like that. But if you're with 40 other people, they're all in their own mind, right? Because they're practicing, right? Only you can do it. You are your own savior in Buddhism. Such a wonderful, empowering message. Even though it's hard, you can do it. That's what the Buddha tells us. Follow this Noble Eightfold Path. If you follow this path to the best of your ability, then you will end your suffering. You will become your own savior. Is this not a wonderful message? I love it, right? As somebody who wasn't born with this Buddhist teachings, this has been such a powerful, wonderful teaching for me in this life. Right? It has allowed me to let go of many cravings and sufferings. I still have a lot more to go. I'm not awakened yet. But I feel like I've come far enough to really understand that these teachings truly are for one who wants to save themselves, for one who wants to practice for their own freedom from suffering. Okay? We are the ones who must put in the work. The teacher has given us the information, right? Now we have to take the test. The teacher can't give us the answers. They can point the way. That's what the Buddha and all of the disciples since the Buddha's time who have passed on the teachings, that's what they've done. But we have to take the test on our own. Only we can do it. So friends, with that, I wish you a very spiritually successful practice. However you're practicing, if you're practicing this Noble Eightfold Path, eventually it will lead to the ending of your suffering. But even gradually over time, you will be able to see how little by little, your suffering lessens, your craving lessens, right? Your peace and contentment increases. And you're realizing, I am on the path that was followed by the rightly self-awakened ones of previous times. And I can do it. So with that, friends, I wish you much luck in completing this path. Practice well and be well. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy.